Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
How's everybody doing?
Great.
Good. I'd like to welcome you back to the Leading by Example Clinical Skills Training Series. I believe this is our third installment. Through the first two installments, we covered a significant and substantive amount of information. And as a result of us covering as much as we have covered, my expectations of you in this process are heightened. I have a heightened expectation of you in this process. And the paramount of my expectation is participation. I'm looking for a increased level of participation in this installment because I believe you have enough information at this point to participate in a meaningful way. And just to quickly review what we covered, I think we did in a very expeditious and grand manner, looked at the history of enriched structural family therapy. We reviewed some of the assumptions and the tenets of structural family therapy. We moved from that point to begin to look at family systems. We reviewed the family system comprehensively. We broke it down into subsystems. We began to explore the roles and the responsibilities of those subsystems. And then we, in the last installment, opened by reviewing elements of family structure. We talked about order in families. We talked about communication in families. We talked about what I believe is the most important component, love in families. And we talked about love. We also reviewed in the last session together the concept of reflective therapeutic process. And we talked about the value of us as helpers, being with our clients in a non-judgmental way, and ensuring that we are developing and honing our own lens that we look through in order to evaluate and assess families, first and foremost to ensure that it's clean. One of the worst things you can do is look through a pair of dirty glasses or attempt to drive in a tumultuous, dangerous environment with a filthy windshield. It's going to affect, impact, and in some ways restrict your ability to see clearly. And so in a much less tangible and abstract way, the lens that we look through, which is the lens of our mind and our own judgment, if it is filthy, we can expect to have a toxic outcome. So I encouraged us to spend a good amount of time as helpers to keep the lens that we look through clean. And the best way to gather residue on your lens is to be judgmental and to try to impose your own thoughts and beliefs on others, and to believe that you know best for someone than they know for themselves, right? And so the way to keep it clean is to truly respect the right of others to make decisions for themselves, and to truly believe in the value of empowering others to develop the ability to make good, sound decisions on the behalf of themselves and their family. And so we walk through some methods that we can use as helpers to help us be more effective in keeping our lens clean. And we talked about some of the dynamics and some of the mechanisms by which we can execute reflective process with our clients. We did that. And so now that leads us to this session, which we're going to spend the lion's share of our time looking at a model that I adore. This model is called the awareness wheel. Has anybody present ever been exposed to, heard about the awareness wheel? Good. So I just want to give a brief overview of the use of the awareness wheel. Now, mind you, the banner that we're working under as practitioners within the structural family therapy model is a banner that requires us to acknowledge that our primary responsibility is to help people and families observe and manage their own process. I want you to note that. That is critical and key. Put it in quotes, underline it twice. Our responsibility is to help people and families observe and manage their own process. There are two verbs that are present in that sentence: observation and management. The awareness wheel is a tool that assists us in assisting our clients and their families with observing and managing their process. One of the first steps as a helper and as a practitioner in doing that with a client, with a family, is we first have to become master observers. What the awareness wheel does is it gives us a system, a framework that guides our observation. Helps us put things neatly so that we can think through it and understand it as it emerges before us. That's the purpose of the awareness wheel. Because we know that life, family, is not a neat, ordered process. It doesn't happen in this clean, linear manner by which we have a tendency to study. I encourage all of you in the beginning to bring your own family to this process, because I will reiterate, it will be virtually impossible for you to understand the depth of what I'm sharing with you unless you understand it in the context of your own family. It's funny how we have sometimes very strong and poignant opinions of others and their family, and if we look close enough, we will find that we're not much different, and our families are not much different. And that's why I ask you to bring your own family, because where your family bonds are is where your deepest passion, your deepest concern, and your deepest love resides. Right? And so that through that, there's another level of illumination, of clarity that comes in your attempt to understand when you try to understand it as it relates to your mother. When you try to understand it as it relates to your brother, or your uncle, or your aunt. And so I'm asking you to bring all of those wonderful people with you to this awareness wheel experience, and then to plug yourself in, and then assess your own self and your own process, just to see whether that you can extract any value from what we're going to cover. So without further ado, let's get to the awareness wheel. So the awareness wheel informs us that all human behavior, conduct, is driven by a desire of self-preservation, and it informs us that just about everything that we're doing is an effort on our part to be okay. Do you remember me sharing that 2 sessions ago? Bottom line is we're all just trying to be okay. And okay is as you define it. We all have a different okay. You know, Shatara, you're okay, may be different than mine okay. But nonetheless, in principle, the ultimate humanistic goal is for us to abide in an experience of okayness. You'll find that most of the difficulty, challenge, hurt, pain, depression, anxiety, they're all offsprings of a lack of okayness. I just made that up. All of that are the offsprings of a lack of okayness. When we're not okay, we will have a real physical, emotional, and psychic response to that reality as we have defined it. And so the awareness wheel helps us to observe this process in others so that we are equipped with assisting others to observe themselves. And then we're able to empower them to make choices about how they want to respond to the lack of okayness or the abiding okayness in their life. So, what this wheel acknowledges is that we are all, as human beings, in this indelible, constant, and non-interrupted relationship with the environment in which we exist. We are here, and we are having a real experience in our transaction and our relationship in everything that is around us. That includes the people, that includes the places, that includes the atmosphere, everything that is around us. We are in a relationship with that and negotiating that constantly. Now, we know that relationships are, at the root of relationships, is a concept of transaction. There's a giving and taking, a giving and receiving that's happening. The way that we communicate, give information, and receive information from our environment is through our senses. This is ground zero. This is the launch pad of all that we do. The beginning is through our senses. Somebody help me identify our senses. What are our senses?
Smell, hear.
Smell. So part of our senses is smell, sight, touch,
Hear
hearing,
and tasting.
tasting,
Oh, touch, that was touch, I'm sorry.
okay, physical touch. Any other senses? We see things, we hear things, we smell things, physically can feel things. Any other senses?
We can think things. I don't know
Think
if it's
things. And that's a cerebral process that happens a little further down around the wheel. But our senses, our innate, most basic elements, there's one we haven't mentioned. Intuition is already up here, but I want to make sure we identify that. Because of all the senses, what I've found in my own practice and my own experience is intuition is the sense that we have the least developed relationship with. I don't want to take for granted that everybody understands what we mean when we say intuition. Can someone help me define
I
that?
think it's like a broad category, but just to keep it very simply, like if you get that feeling that someone's looking at you, or
Yeah.
if someone's in the room with you,
Mhm.
maybe you're sitting in the corner of the room doing something and somebody walks in, you didn't hear anything, you turn around because you sense someone's there. That can be very basic forms of intuition, and it can become more and more complicated.
Yes.
Maybe you get the sense something bad's gonna happen. Maybe you get that sense that one of your family members is hurt. There's lots of layers of it, but it's
Yes.
that knowing without seeing,
Yes.
I guess.
It's that gut. It's your gut. You know, I think our elders had a better relationship with intuition than we do. I think technology has had a tremendous impact in stunting the development of intuition. You know, I had an old school grandmother who would breed energy. I would come over her house with my friends, and she would have very little verbal exchange with them. But after they left, she would say, "Hey, so something ain't right about that boy." Like, he was only here for 5 minutes, and you need to watch him. It's that gut feeling. It's that thing that you don't have any physical, tangible evidence, but it is something that emerges out of your soul. You know, it resides there. It's very powerful, very important. I've also found in my experience that women have a greater dose of it. I think it's as a result of the maternal capacity of women in bearing children. At least I've had that experience that my wife is better at it than me. I've had that experience. But intuition is very, very, very powerful in launching us off into the process of navigating. Yes, sir.
That intuition, I think it, to me, a lot of times when you explain with your grandmother, it works with some of those other things up there that you have under there. It's the sight, the sound, and the touch. You know, your friend comes in, she just hears him, she just sees him, and she can't put what's wrong. She don't have any proof. But the older people, they know something's not right.
That's right.
You know, it's kind of like faith. You have faith in something, you don't have physical proof of it, but you have faith, you know, and that intuition is kind of saying, you can't physically touch it, but that sight of it, that smell of it, that sound of it, sometimes all those go together and it forms your intuition that something's either good or it's not right.
Yes, absolutely. And that's what this ultimately comes down to. Instinct. Yeah. Whether it's good to ensure that we're okay, or whether it's a threat to our okayness. So, on the wheel, we're moving through, we're hearing people, we're seeing people, we're relating to people, places, things. We're smelling things, we're seeing things, we're feeling things in our gut. The natural next step in the process, and this happens in sequence, As soon as you get information, the very next step is you will process it. You will have a thought. You have a thought. Because innately, we're designed to interpret information to ensure that we are making appropriate decisions, that we're moving progressively through this process called life, and that we're doing it in a way that ensures our safety and well-being. So, after we experience things through our senses, we're going to have a thought about it. Have a thought. Everybody familiar with thinking? You're thinking now. Yep. You're seeing me, you're hearing me, and as a result of the words that are coming out of my mouth, you are processing it through your intellectual process.